All right, welcome everyone to the webinar. Today's webinar is on building an effective workflow in Autodesk Building Design Suite, presented by Peter Marchese. A little bit about Microdesk. Microdesk is an Autodesk Gold, Oracle, and Google partner. We are technology training consultants for the AEC industry. Microdesk has 11 offices nationwide, and that includes 90-plus consulting specialists and software developers. The Autodesk Building Design Suite is a complete integrated solution for the entire project delivery process, and it keeps getting better. This webinar, you'll learn about the latest features available in the 2014 release of the Autodesk Building Design Suite. Learn how your workflows in 2013 have been updated with the 2014 versions. Plus, learn tips and best practices for how to take advantage of having all the BIM tools in one box to improve collaborations across multiple programs and disciplines. Discover how to tailor your personal workflow to more effectively work between both CAD and BIM-based programs, and as a result, be more efficient and deliver better results. Presenting today's webinar session, we have with us Peter Marchese, one of Microdesk's senior consultants. Peter joined Microdesk as a senior consultant with expertise in architectural technology solutions. He has extensive working knowledge of AutoCAD, Architectural Desktop, and Revit. At Microdesk, Peter works with national architecture firms implementing Revit. He specializes in custom training and content creation and leading firms through the process of creating standards and workflows based on building information modeling technology. Just a few logistics before we begin. In order to minimize any background distractions, you are all on mute for the duration of the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question area of the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen. Peter will address as many questions as he can at the end of the presentation. If we run out of time, we'll provide you with our contact information so you can follow up with us. And so now, I'll turn it over to Peter.
Good afternoon, everybody. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Building Design Suite workflow. And before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the design suites themselves. So what you can actually see on the screen right now is a listing of all the different kinds of suites that Autodesk actually has. Now, the reason I wanted to focus on this is just to show you that Autodesk realizes that there's a lot of things that are going on out there. And they also realize that nobody just uses one program. So what they've been trying to do over the last few years is to ensure that people have a workflow that works for them, regardless of how or what they actually do. So they're trying to make sure that things actually work for each other. The version of this that we're going to be focusing on is the Building Design Suite. There are certain programs that are consistent throughout all of them, but we're focusing on that one. Now, within that Building Design Suite, these are all the different programs that you can get access to. And now when I say programs, I'm being very specific about that, because program essentially means installed on your computer. Now, the reason why I'm being specific like this is that you also have a lot of other tools that are available to you on Autodesk 360. And all of these impact your workflow. They give you different methods of integrating one program into another, how each one can leverage existing content. And one of the things that they're trying to do each year is make sure that your work is consistent. You know, if you're familiar with the examples of BIM, it's very much like that. You want to make sure that your work is consistent, you're not having to redo it over and over again. And when you're moving from program to program, that you're not losing information or losing features or abilities, which cause you to do rework, which makes you less efficient. So throughout the presentation, what I'm going to be doing is focusing on a couple of different things in terms of how these different programs work with each other and how they've updated that in 2014. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be touching on every single one of these, only specific ones. Again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them into either the questions or the chat window, and I'll be doing my best to keep an eye on that. All right. So, let's see here. With the 360 tools, these are the ones that we actually have for there. So you have file storage, environmental analysis, structural analysis, Inventor optimization, rendering. A couple of ones you might not be familiar on there are Formit, InfraWorks, Fusion 360, and Recap Photo. So those ones I definitely will be touching on as we go through this stuff. Now, last year when they started to really focus on workflow issues, What they did was they added these features into a couple of the programs that you had. And the two that I'm showing up here right now are 3D Max and Revit. What the suite workflows enabled you to do was make sure that you can easily send information from one project to another, or sorry, one program to another. So that way you wouldn't even have to, say, export something out and then having to open back up and see what changes are. So much of the things that they've done is they've enhanced this, but they've also made it so that you don't even have to send it to another program or change it. Several of the new tools actually just open the files natively. Okay. Now, looking at Revit, for example, and this is not a Revit arc or structure, it's just Revit I'm talking about. So what they've done is they've enhanced the import and export for IFC, DWG, DXF. But the one that I wanted to focus on in here is the import and exploding of 3D solids to 3D elements. Now, like most people, explode is a dirty word when you talk about Revit. You don't want to start exploding CAD files. And if you do, you want to almost do it in a separate file other than the one that you're in your project. But if what you've done is you have a mass or solid forms that have been created in another program, whether that program is AutoCAD or SketchUp, you don't want to have to redo it just because now you're moving to Revit and you want to continue that process. So what this at least allows you to do is take that 3D solid that you've created elsewhere and you can actually explode it so that it becomes a local 3D solid. That allows you to grab and push and pull and manipulate that element as if it was actually done natively inside of Revit. Now, not to say that this works with every single solid object, but if it's a clean, solid element, it should work. Now, in terms of structural workflows specifically, so one of the things that they've done is they've made sure that the different tools relative to Revit structure actually work more efficiently. So the tools are already there. You already had robot structural analysis. You already had AutoCAD structural detailing. The things that you did not have previously, though, was the structural analysis and code checking toolkit. So, and also the robot structural analysis in the cloud was sort of in beta last year. They were still testing it out and seeing how people took to it and utilized it for their purposes. So these are some of the tools that are in there. And essentially how that works is that way when you're using Revit structure, or the full version of Revit as it were, and you download it from the Exchange App Store, you can now actually do certain code checks based on your Revit model to ensure compliance. So again, trying to keep things all consistent. That way your model that you're doing for your analysis, the same one that you're doing for your detailing, same one that you're doing for your documentation and coordination. You can now run certain checks on that in the exact same program. You don't even need to send this out. If you wanted to do analysis and your current computer doesn't have the hardware that can handle that, you can actually upload that now to the cloud for analysis. But the main one here in terms of workflow that is completely new is that code checking framework. Just note that little asterisk. That just reminds you that it doesn't come with the program by default. It's a subscription tool that you can get. You just have to download it and install it. Now, with regards to MEP, one of the complaints or knocks against Revit MEP is that it doesn't quite do fabrication. It does detailing, it does documentation, it does design very well, but it's the fabrication where it starts to fall off a little bit. Well, Autodesk actually purchased a couple of companies about a year ago that solely focused on that aspect of it, and they've been working on integrating that into Revit Sense. So what this allows you to do is actually take your Revit model and sync and go back and forth with CADMap, FabMap, CamDuct. They will share a content database. That way your information is actually going to be consistent. It's not like once you export it, everything has to be rebuilt from the ground up. So this allows you to synchronize your work and keep your workflow consistent, even if you're not the one who designed it. So you might be giving Revit MEP content, but you're actually the one who's going to be doing the fabrication. This allows you to take the model geometry that you've been given and then turn that into the fabrication models that you need to do either your shop drawings or your real, more highly accurate clash detections for construction coordination. So there's a couple of more examples of the difference. So that image on the upper right-hand side, you can see a Revit model. And again, it's not bad. It just doesn't have every single fold, every single piece of metal, every single hanger modeled into it. And you can model that in Revit. However, the amount of time that it takes is usually not feasible for a project schedule or not really beneficial. So in this case, you just take the model that you've already designed, and then you can convert that. And the nice thing is, because it's using a coordination software, it actually allows you to keep working in either or. Now, quantification. Last year, Autodesk was, actually the last several years, Autodesk has been working with a tool called QTO, or Quantity Takeoff. Now, this tool was actually based off of Design Review, and it was one of the tools that you can either get on its own or as part of the Design Suite Ultimate. Now, if anybody actually has Design Suite, which you might have actually noticed, is that there is no QTO in the Design Suite in 2014. That's not to say that they're not doing any quantifications anymore. What it means is that that ability has actually been rolled into Navisworks application. So if you have Navisworks, what you can actually do is take the consolidated models that you might be getting from multiple people, multiple programs, multiple resources, and actually create your quantification in that program. You'll still have the ability to do a report. You still have the ability to do formulas. And you can also export out to Excel if you prefer to finish things up in there once you've gotten your counts. So while Navisworks has a bunch of new features that are great for the workflow within the program, this is the main one that actually works outside of it or is completely new. Now, for those of you who use Inventor or who work with manufacturing or just want to create content based on manufacturer's objects, again, this is sort of an upgrade of what was already there. You previously had the ability to create Revit content off of an Inventor family. So let's say you had mechanical equipment, and you actually are the manufacturer of said equipment. You can take that and use tools like shrink wrap and turn that into a Revit content. The problem was it wasn't really intelligent. It was sort of like a this is it, and that's the only size, and there's no manipulation. So what's happening now is that you're able to export from Inventor into Revit and have it understand elements. What I mean by understand is if you think back to the slide I had earlier about bringing in CAD examples and exploding that, and it turned into native Revit geometry that you push and pull. This is exactly what I mean. So rather than bringing in something that is very complex and has a lot of sort of sloping or rounded edges, I can simplify that surface inside of Inventor and then tell it that I want you to actually send this out and make a Revit content that's made of native elements. So if it's created based on extrusions or blends or evolves, I can easily send it from one into the other, and now I actually have my Revit content without me having to essentially rebuild it all over again. Okay. Okay. Now, another program here is InfraWorks. Now, if you haven't heard of InfraWorks or you saw it and sort of disregarded it because it's a civil tool, it actually is a lot more than that. What it allows you to do is present or communicate your designs in more efficient ways. So if you actually have a building or a site, let me back up one here, sorry. What it allows you to do is create walkthroughs, flybys. But what you can actually do is tell it to stop at specific points and have, as you can see here, a little window pop up and give information, or to stop or hold off. So there's a lot of information that you can use in there. Now, again, it's called InfraWorks. It's designed for infrastructure, but there's nothing in that tool that says you can't use it for a campus or a site or even within a building. So it's just a method of coordinating with different programs. Now, how this actually works now is that it works with a lot more programs natively. So it can actually read a Revit file on its own. It could read Max files on their own. You don't have to be exporting out to specific file formats. And it actually goes back and forward now with Civil 3D, where previously it only went in one direction. So now you can actually build either large-scale infrastructure models using whatever you want, or you can still, again, use it for very small-scale models as well. Just depends on what you're trying to do. But if you get past the name that is more focused on infrastructure, you can utilize this for just about any kind of presentation where you have multiple files coming together. You want something that's very smooth. And, as I'll show a little bit later on, you want something that can be uploaded to the cloud and actually viewed on an iPad or on a website. And this is just a listing of some of the different file formats that it can read natively now. terms of Revit and point clouds, one of the things that they've actually done is they've put in a new point cloud engine, and I'm going to talk about that specifically in a minute. But they've allowed you to snap to points and detected planes a lot more easily, and you have more visualization options and control in terms of cleaning things up. So you can see how on the right side you can actually see more content, more colors, more understandable information. It's also going to be a lot faster than it had been previously. Now, taking a look at some of the 360 cloud tools, we have rendering, energy analysis. The civil design one there is partially because of the InfraWorks. Structural analysis I mentioned earlier. Design optimization if you're working with Inventor, and typical collaboration tools. Now, in terms of new tools specific for the workflows, one of them is storage. Now, 360 was already a storage medium. You can upload and download content there. What they did with the 2014 version of it is they made it more like a Dropbox or a Google Drive, where you actually have a mapped hard drive on your computer that will sync with the content in the cloud. So that way, if I actually have files up there and I want to upload or download, I can just look at that folder. I can go straight in there, create file storage, folder structure, organization, tell it which I want to download and not, and manage all of that from my computer, as opposed to constantly having to go to their website where you may or may not like the interface. So this is something that gets installed automatically when you install the suite. Now, another one here is called Formit. Now, this isn't necessarily part of the suite. It's a free iPad app. The reason why I'm mentioning this is how it actually integrates with the software that is in the suite, in this case, Revit. What this allows you to do is actually model using a very simple and intuitive, almost like finger painting kind of motif. But you can actually bring in maps from Google Maps, locate where your site is, and start using push-pull kind of controls to design what it is that you want. Once you've actually designed that, and also while you're in the iPad app, you can actually get figures and information like gross square footage. So similar to Revit where you do mass floors, same thing. Once that's done, you can actually see on Autodesk 360 what files and models and designs you started with. And from there, you can tell it that what you'd like to do is actually download that file. Now, I just finished talking about how Autodesk 360 can synchronize to your desktop. Now I'm telling you that you can actually go up here and download. The reason why you need to go to the website and download it is because what's actually happening is it's not just downloading a Formit file. You have the ability to tell it that I would prefer that file to come in as an RBT or as an STL. So if you have something like a 3D printer, I can actually download my little Formit model into a format that I can just put right to my printer. Same thing for the Revit. I can open that file up in Revit or Visari and continue manipulating and designing there. Now, I've been talking a little bit about point clouds, and one of these is a tool called Recap in Recap Photo. Now, Recap is a point cloud management viewing tool that gets installed with the Building Design Suite. So this is also some of the integration or tools that allow the other programs that are in the suite to actually work with point clouds much more efficiently. Now, point clouds are point clouds for the most part. You can understand many different formats. The real thing that's very interesting is Recap Photo, because what that actually allows you to do is upload photographs of a building or site or model or content, anything like that, and it can actually create a 3D model of that. So if anybody out there has seen any of the tutorials or videos about Autodesk 360 Catch, this is essentially the professional version of that. So where Catch is geared more towards the hobbyist market, this will be coming with your subscription. At the moment, it's still in a public beta, but this allows you to create 3D model geometry based off the point clouds that it creates from your photographs. So from there, you can take something like that and actually make a 3D model of it. So you can see how it gets a little bit wavy as it gets further away. That's because there's not enough photographs of the area away from the building that it can actually put together. And this 3D geometry of that building was created with essentially a quadricopter RC plane that had a camera on it. And they took a lot of photographs of that building, uploaded it to the cloud, and utilized the cloud's technology to actually put together a 3D model of that building and some of the site. Now, Fusion 360. Again, some of you may or may not have heard about this, and this is another one that's in a beta right now. But the promise of this tool is that, number one, again, it's cloud-based, so it takes advantage of the computational power of the cloud. How this will help you with your workflows, though, is that the software itself is agnostic. It doesn't care where the files come from. In some ways, it's like Navisworks. The goal of this product is to be able to upload whatever file format that you need, whether it's an Inventor file, a Revit file, a Rhino file, but still maintain the geometry and the intelligence that has been assigned to that. If you have an Inventor file that has different parts coming together and has hinges, you have a Revit family that's going in there that has parameterization and flexible points, and you have a Rhino file that actually has similar features, all of that should be maintained. And while you're working on it in the cloud, you'll then have the ability to save it or export it out as a file format of your choosing. And that is the goal and that is the promise of Fusion 360. So again, at the moment it's in beta, but this is one of the cloud tools that will be part of our workflow going forward. So I kind of went through a bunch of different software that's currently out there. Some of the new programs that are still in beta, but they are a public beta, so you can sign up if you want to try them and help guide their delivery. So, of the questions that we have, one of the ones here is for the solids workflow between AutoCAD and Revit. Does Revit recognize AEC walls as a wall, or is that still imported solid? That would still come in as a solid if it was a DWG. However, if you utilized it as an IFC file, that would understand it as an actual wall. Again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to type them into the question window on the right-hand side. There was also a question about the presentation afterwards. It is actually going to be saved, and it will be made available and uploaded to the Microdesk YouTube channel. The other question is, will the recap photo piece ever be embedded into the recap software for direct installs? Since it's in beta, I can't say one way or another for certainty. However, I will say this. Right now, it's completely as part of the 360 website. However, the 123D Catch program did actually have a desktop install, mostly as a front end, because again, all the work there was being done on the cloud as well. So my assumption is they may actually build that in, but it probably won't be until next year's version. But again, if you have a strong feeling one way or another, I would recommend that you actually do sign up for the beta, and that way you can help guide their documentation and guide their setup. All righty. So everybody, thank you very, very much for your time. We do appreciate it. If there are any other questions that anybody has that we weren't able to get to or that you think of later on, please feel free to email us at webinars@microdesk.com or shoot us an email at 1-800-336, give us a call at 1-800-336-3375. So thank you very much for attending. We really appreciate it, and have a great day.